Perfect. All right. Well, I'm Lisa Hasty and I've met most of you, but it's nice to see some new faces today. I'd like for us to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today, the Wiradjuri people, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. While we would prefer to be doing this in person, Rach has spent much of last week ensuring today's session would go ahead, and we're committed to that. Thanks for your work organising and getting us ready, Rach. There's no doubt times are tough for many, and while last week marked Are You OK Day, the reality is every day should be Are You OK Day. And I'd like to remind you all of the Better Place Project, which is a wellbeing initiative and partnership between the personnel group and Albury Business Connect. The website is betterplaceproject.com.au, and it lists a bunch of resources that employees and employers can access for support. So we encourage you to make that available to your teams and access it yourself should you need it. I'll introduce our team here at Albury Business Connect. We have Rachel Croker, who looks after our events and administration. She hides behind the scenes but pulls together all of our events, and it's a mammoth administrative job. We thank Rachel for doing that. Rhianna's also joined us this morning, and she's in our communications officer role. She's responsible for our outbound comms, newsletters, social media. She does a wonderful job trawling information to provide you guys with the most relevant details. We have a few board members joining us. Welcome to Alex Berry, Barry Young, Bernadette Torreson, Kate Stevens and Rebecca O'Brien. A special thank you for the work that you guys do. And I just want to mention that if any of our members have feedback, feel free to reach out to either myself, any of our Albury Business Connect team or our board members. We're all here to help and serve you guys. A welcome to Albury City Councillor Alice Clacken. Good morning. And from Albury City, we're joined by Angela Larkin, Brad Ferris and Keaton Johnston. Thank you. A special welcome to our presenters, Adam Eady of RSM and Angela Sandral of Icaria Health. And a very, very special welcome to our sponsors. Without your support, providing sessions like these, other development opportunities and further networking activities would be very challenging. So a very heartfelt thank you to you. If any of our members happen to bump into these sponsors, please tap them on the shoulder and thank them too. Now for our last set of welcomes, certainly last but not least, any new members. We hope that the next business before hours, we can meet you in person. Welcome this morning. We're going to now move on and have Adam Eady present. We will open up for questions at the end. So I'll ask you all to use the raise hand feature and unmute yourself to ask the questions. Adam, we'll start getting you ready there. Adam's going to share some details on RSM's 2030 Big Picture series. Welcome, Adam, and take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. I'll just quickly share my screen. Where are we? See, let me know if that works. How's that look? Yeah, everyone see?
Good to go, Bucky.
Good to go. Excellent. Thank you very much. So yes, Lisa, thank you very much, and Rachel also, and also the rest of the team at the Albury Business Connect for the opportunity to talk to you all today. Just before I go ahead, I'm just going to mention that at the time of writing these reports, the impact of COVID is really unclear. So, and it still is. So the perspectives and recommendations provided in this series is based on business as usual. We think that once the pandemic shock recedes, businesses should reevaluate the landscape that they operate in and seek advice regarding new opportunities going forward. So the 2030 Big Picture series. What is it? It's basically a series of reports that that RSM have created. It offers perspectives on economic growth for thriving regional areas in Australia. So Australia's economy is largely driven by the agriculture industry, forestry, mining industries, and fishing as well, which are all predominantly located in regional Australia. And funnily enough, there is a fairly strong RSM presence in each of those regions within Australia. So each report has been prepared using a whole range of market research and data, and it includes interviews with senior business leaders, economists, advisors, who are all offering perspectives on the trends and opportunities and the challenges within the regions. So Albury and the Wagga, the Albury RSM and the Wagga office have been heavily involved in writing this paper around the Riverina region, the Riverina Murray region, and it highlights the investment and growth opportunities within the region from now until 2030. So the Riverina Murray region is characterised really by strong performance in the manufacturing and the agriculture industries. So, and I'll talk a little bit about those industries a little bit later on. I've also got Ross Dixon from RSM in Albury to talk about the manufacturing industry a little bit later on. So, and ongoing improvements in these industries, as well as growth of businesses generally and the population growth really make the Riverina an attractive prospect for potential investors. So the focus on this report is more specifically around the Albury region, although if you do read a copy of the Riverina region report, it is also fairly heavily focused on the Wagga area and Griffith to some extent, but I'll be talking a little bit more about the Albury region in particular. So I guess the driving force behind growth and opportunities within the Riverina region is really around population growth. You know, the Riverina region covers a huge area and the population of the Riverina region is around 170,000, and that's expected to grow by about 10% over the next 10 or 15 years. So the Albury-Wodonga region, however, has a population of in excess of 180,000, and the population growth is expected to be around 16% over the next 10 to 15 years. So there's an expectation that 30,000, there's going to be an extra 30,000 more people in the Albury-Wodonga region by 2037. So that's a fairly strong population growth, and it's not too far from the expected population growth of Melbourne and Sydney as well. So that actually surprised me when I heard about that. So there are a couple of key industries that really are required to enable such a huge level of population growth. And one of those, that's the health and the education industry, and also the transport industry as well. So in terms of the education industry, we're already fairly well equipped to handle a large, a fairly significant increase in the population over the next period of time. The Riverina has around 150 schools already and 14 higher educational and vocational training facilities. Most towns have at least one public and one private school. So the infrastructure there is already there to handle a significant level of growth in the education industry. For those of you who would have been involved in the last month's business before ours, you would have heard some information from the guys at Albury-Wodonga Health speak about. The health industry is a big industry, or there's been a lot of government investment over the recent times and going forward as well. The Albury region has around 50 private and public hospitals, and it's the first cross-border health facility in Australia, and it's, like I said, it's received a significant amount of government funding to upgrade the facilities around the area as well. So that includes around $46 million for an upgrade of the Nolan House facility, $36 million to upgrade the emergency department, and another $5 million on the community outpatient services hub. So there's a fair bit of money that's been injected into the Albury-Wodonga region recently. The Wagga Hospital's already undertaken a $431 million project as well, and the Griffith Hospital upgrade is expected to cost around $250 million over the next 10 years. So, I guess the government's really gearing up and spending a lot of money in the health industry in expectation of that population growth going forward. The health industry is also the largest employer in the region as well. So. And then the transport industry, the government's recently committed to $44 million to the Inland Rail Interface Improvement Program. And that's to develop ideas for a more productive inland rail supply chain and to increase the amount of freight on the inland rail. So the Nexus Industrial Precinct is something I'll talk to in a minute, which will link back to that. Also, there are plans for the airport precinct to be expanded as well, so which will help prepare for future demand and will create opportunities for people to live in Albury while working remotely. One of the impacts of COVID, I guess. And also Rex and Qantas are expected to return to normal after COVID. So yeah, that'll be a positive. Qantas are now also flying direct to and from Melbourne for the snow season, which also provides a boost to the tourism economy. So as I mentioned before, the Nexus Industrial Precinct it's an area located just north of Albury, out near Edamoga. It's a 450 hectare site that's being developed with the aim of becoming a transport and logistics and manufacturing hub. This is a $30 million project, and it includes about $10 million contribution from the state government and a further $8 million contribution from the Australian government. So that little precinct, I won't say little, that precinct out the road there is expected to generate about $1.5 billion for the Albury economy annually, and it's expected to create almost 10,000 jobs over the next 30 years. So that's pretty impressive. It'll also be home to a $45 million plastics recycling facility, which aligns with the Albury Council's aim to establish that precinct as a bit of a renewable energy hub. The regional deal it's a deal between the Albury and Wodonga councils. It's a collaboration between the Australian government, the New South Wales and Victorian governments, and then also the Albury and Wodonga councils that's designed to support population growth. And it's about identifying the opportunities that those various levels of governments can partner in on over the next decade to help drive that population growth and attract investment into the region. And the whole purpose is to ensure that the community reaches its full potential. So the package is still in draft format at the moment, but the deal is expected to include projects to help support health, economic development, livability, regional education, infrastructure and connectivity. So the projects will also support the Indigenous community and allow for harmonisation of cross-border communities. And I've listed their government investment infrastructure. So obviously I mentioned about the amount of money that's being spent in the health industry locally at the moment. The New South Wales government's expected to invest about $10 billion over the next decade into defence. The Wagga bases, the RAAF and Kapooka will receive a fair bit of money for redevelopment of those spaces as well. So we've never really seen this level of government spending on infrastructure before around the region. And what that does is it creates employment in the short term around construction, and then long term as businesses and the councils gear up to utilise the infrastructure. So it's really about making sure that we're prepared for the population growth that's expected over the next 10 or 15 years. So I've listed a whole bunch of industries over there to the side, and a lot of them really, the opportunities are really driven by that population growth. But what I'm going to do is I'll speak a little bit about the agricultural industry, and I've got Ross Dixon here that'll talk a little bit about the manufacturing industry. So I'll hand over to Ross. Ross is a bit of a guru in the area in terms of manufacturing. He's a senior manager here at the Albury office. He's doing some great work here, and I'm sure a lot of you may have seen or heard of him around the region. So I'll hand it over to you, Ross.
Thanks, Adam, and good morning, everyone. I'll keep, obviously it's fairly brief, but in terms of the manufacturing sector, I think quite a number of you have attended our events, which we've been running over the last 12 months in regards to it. So if we look at Albury and the Riverina as a kind of manufacturing centre of excellence for regional Australia, the last few years have seen a kind of resurgence in Australian manufacturing. There's been a real push. That's been a geopolitical push to onshore manufacturing. And the whole concept of Australia made has kind of started to become a moniker for quality, ethically sourced produce, whether that be again through agricultural, which obviously Adam will talk to, but particularly in this manufacturing space, where Albury kind of sits with its strength is its traditional blue collar workforce, which is going to allow for when onshoring kind of takes place, is going to allow for, because of the strength in the region around things such as welding, fabrication, traditional metal works, it's going to allow kind of high quantity kind of manufacturing to be based in the Riverina. Obviously, Adam's talked to what's going on at Nexus and across with the Wagga Activation Precinct, and there's a huge amount of work that other organisations such as Albury Business Connect and Angela and the team from the economic development team that are doing to drive kind of manufacturing, kind of having the easiest path of least resistance into the region. I'll touch really quickly on the fact the reason why Albury has positioned itself so strongly, as Adam's alluded to, it's on the inland and road rail kind of routes, which has obviously allows for the eastern states to be serviced within 24 hours. That's one of the only places in the country that can do that. There's been a massive push for robotics and automation in the manufacturing industry, and that is kind of easing some of the challenges that we're seeing, not just in Albury, but in Leeton and Griffith and Wagga, around not having a skill shortage. So there's been a push in investment for robotics and automation. Albury and the Riverina are positioning themselves well for that. And as well, there's substantial support for export-focused manufacturing going through state and federal supports at the moment. We've got a webinar later today, which is focused on export, and we've had 80 businesses, the majority of which are across the Riverina, sign up. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the export market, then please do sign up for that. Appreciate there's a lot to talk about, but mindful of time. So feel free to get in touch. And look, RSM continue to run events. We were hoping to do an in-person event before the end of the year. The reality is that these are just going to be virtual for now. But if there's anything you want to discuss, then please feel free to reach out and don't hesitate. But thanks for the opportunity to talk. I'll pass back to you now, Adam.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it. So in terms of the agriculture industry, around the Riverina itself, the agricultural land accounts for about 78% of the region's total area. So, and it generates about $2.5 billion to the region annually. So, I think it's the second biggest industry behind manufacturing in the region. So it's quite significant, and I guess it's been significant for a long period of time. Access to water is obviously the key challenge for the industry. In particular in the irrigation areas up around the Murrumbidgee irrigation area and the Collyambla irrigation area. But around Albury, we've been really quite fortunate over the last 2 seasons in particular in terms of rainfall and conditions generally. So, our farmers are seeing there's good yields in their crops. There's plenty of feed for livestock, and following from that, livestock and commodity prices are really, really strong. Land prices are increasing, so it's creating more wealth. Farms are getting bigger. Machinery is becoming larger and more sophisticated. So too are the farming techniques and the farmers themselves. And there's more data available to help make decisions. So the farming industry is really, it's going really well at the moment in the region. And the outlook's really, really positive as well for the next couple of years. Obviously, one of the challenges within this particular industry is around climate change, and I guess outside of the last couple of seasons, what that's doing is making it harder to grow the traditional crops that the farmers usually grow, like wheat and barley and canola and oats. But that's providing for a shift in the way farming practices are, the way farmers are practicing, and there's been a return to mixed farming, so they're incorporating livestock as well as cropping. In terms of the government funding that's been provided, there's been a significant amount of funding through the Rural Assistance Authority over the last few years, and that's ongoing. So there's been $1 billion that has been made available for farmers in New South Wales, so not just the Riverina region, but New South Wales under the Farm Innovation Fund. So that's about I guess providing funds to be able to spend on infrastructure and drought proofing their farms. There's been drought assistance funds, there's been water infrastructure loans. So there's a lot of money that's being provided to farmers to be able to drought-proof their farms and really prepare for, prepare to be sustainable going forward. On the back of just, I guess the traditional agricultural industry, there's a couple of growth areas within the industry, and agricultural research is seen to be a huge growth area in the region, and there's been a significant focus on drought research as well as just general agricultural research as well. So Charles Sturt in Wagga have created a world-class facility for agricultural research, which is pretty good, pretty cool, because obviously students coming to the region, to the Wagga area, to be able to undertake that research. So that's really exciting. And then also value-added agriculture is also considered a huge growth area for the region as well, which is basically the manufacturing process that's involved to increase the value of the product that's being produced. So if you think about a farmer that grows strawberries, for example, and I guess branches out and produces or produces products in conjunction with the strawberries, such as strawberry jam. So there's a couple of I guess emerging little sub industries within the agriculture industry as well that's providing some growth and opportunities going forward as well. Being mindful of time, I won't go into too much detail around the other industries that have been listed just there, but like I said before, largely the impact of the population growth is going to drive growth in those industries as well.
Thank you, Adam. Obviously, significant population growth. I think you said that you were surprised to see in the next 15 to 16 years, 30,000 people. That is quite significant, and coupled with the investment, it does provide a lot of opportunities moving forward. We're going to open up now for some questions. Is anyone... Sorry, Adam, have you finished?
Oh, I just had a quick... I just had another quick slide just to run through, but yeah, being mindful of time, I'm happy to move on. No,
sorry, continue, and then we'll jump into the questions. My apologies.
No worries at all. Okay, look, it was just quickly, just about things to consider in the future. So obviously, at the moment, financing and getting access to finance has been difficult. The banks are a little bit reluctant to spend at them, or to lend at the moment in the current environment, and also the process is just slower. So let's hope that settles down a little bit once COVID, once the effects of COVID recede. Obviously, COVID is something to consider going forward. There's border closures, we're working from home, there's a whole lot of things going on. So the impacts are unknown just for now. One of the opportunities that will arise out of COVID is working from home and remote working. So I think people moving back out of the cities, back to the region, will provide for employment opportunities back home, or even if they're still working for the employer in the city but living in the area and spending their money in the local area. So and look, where to from here? I guess the report's about highlighting opportunities and some projects and some government investment in the region. So just trying to link in with some of those things, or trying to think outside the square a little bit around how businesses can create opportunities from the population growth as well. So thank you very much. Here's a list of our partners and principals here at Albury, and I'll pass back over to you, Lisa.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Adam.
No, that's okay.
Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask either Adam or Ross at RSM, just on that presentation and the opportunities that might be before us?
Yeah, I'll do this.
Thanks, Barry.
Just a quick one on government funding, and perhaps an opportunity to look for some further funding in terms of what's been going on with the border, in terms of lockdowns from Victoria and New South Wales, and some more targeted funding. I'd really like to look at something around how we tap into that in terms of not only funding for the short-term visitor economy, but that long-term manufacturing, business and residential relocation. So a lot of the things you touch on today and in that report would be useful. So just wondering how we can tap in, make use of the work you've put together, perhaps with Business Wodonga, to advocate a little bit more for some of that funding to be made available to the border.
I'm happy to talk to that with some of the manufacturing ones pretty quickly, if you're okay.
Yep, go for it, Ross.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm sure you're aware there's a number of different schemes that are available. The challenge we have at the moment being obviously a cross-border location, you've got, say, for example, the Job Creation Fund, which is targeting on the New South Wales border, which will give you $20,000 per FTE. But there is then that natural inherent competition between New South Wales and Victoria. We do send around, from an RSM perspective, I know for our manufacturing clients, we send around a list of the grants that come out regularly. Our understanding following from the meeting that I think some of the business chambers had with Dominic Perrottet on Friday is that there's going to be another stimulus package announced for early October for the Riverina, with a more targeted support package, particularly around in the short term for tourism and hospitality, but long term acknowledging that the forestry, water and manufacturing is going to be the growth industry. From our perspective, I'd encourage you to sign up for obviously our mailing list, or likewise reach out to Adam or I directly, and we can just add you to that mailing list to share what we do already from a manufacturing perspective, that is. Don't know if you've got any other thoughts, Adam?
I think you nailed it, Ross.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Ross.
What I will say too is if you guys, have we all got is there as a link to the report being sent out to all the viewers today, Lisa?
It'll be circulated at the end of the session today.
Okay. So if you have a look at the reports, what I found actually was one of the real benefits that I got out of the report was that all the research that's been done, it's all linked in, and there's been some there's websites that and there's footnotes in the report that you can actually click on and find out some more information. So I actually found that really useful, because by reading the report it can be quite brief, but once you click into those resources you can find out a lot more information. So you might be able to just do a little bit of further research there, Barry, and find out some more answers to your question.
Thanks, Adam. Does anyone else have any questions about RSM? All right. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to change the pace a little now. We're going to move on to Angela Sandral of Icaria Health, who'll be speaking on the very important topic of disability and disability inclusion and accessibility. We'll get you to share your screen there, Angela.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, can you see that there now? Perfect. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. As Lisa said, changing pace a little bit, but maybe once you've made your investments, you can think a little bit more about disability and inclusion from an accessibility lens. And that's what I'm going to be chatting with you today about. So just a bit about me. I'm an OT. I studied here at CSU and I grew up on a farm about an hour away. I then, after graduating, did move to quite remote areas in New South Wales, including out near Burke, worked out at Riverina and Warren. So I've had a bit of a diverse range of experience as an OT, mainly with adults who have a disability or are aged, from a hospital acute setting through to the community. I'm a mum of 3 primary school age boys, and I do the odd triathlon when I'm fit and actually training. I recently did some postgrad study, and part of this I had Hogan personality profiling completed. And to give you a bit about my why, I scored quite high on altruism from an equity perspective, and I suppose this links to why for me today's topic's quite important. I just don't like how inequitable it is for people with disabilities in daily life. So to give you an example, recently I was fueling up my car in central Albury and watched as a young lady in a power wheelchair had to go backwards and forwards outside the petrol station window and door to get the attendant's attention. She had to do this purely because the veranda and door have single steps and are not accessible in her powered chair. And hence she had to be served in the driveway of the petrol station when the attendant came out. She couldn't select her drink or purchase anything with the privilege of perusing items that those of us living without a disability take for granted. And at the time, I just stood there and thought to myself, how is this fair when this could be simply fixed with a portable ramp or wedge? Furthermore, the Paralympics were just amazing, and who couldn't have developed a special sense of awe and empathy for those with a disability competing recently. And lastly, I thought I'd just share a quote to keep in mind as I go through this presentation. It was one I heard from Curtis McGrath, who's a Paralympian, who recently said on a podcast that disability is an exclusive club, which none of us ever know when we may join. So I thought that's a great ponder point as I go through, because a lot of people with a disability, you know, it's an unexpected life change, and it can affect any of us and our families at any time. So Icaria Health, who are we? We're locally owned and operated business owned by Peter and Sophie Sir. We have a multidisciplinary team of speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physios, exercise physiologists, allied health assistants and admin, and provide community-based allied health services to those with a disability age 0 and up living in our community. We're the largest allied health community aged care and NDIS provider in the region, and we aim to improve the lives of those we work with so that they can live a fulfilled life as they wish. So just to give you some background, the overarching government act that links to my presentation today is the New South Wales Disability Inclusion Act from 2014. This outlines that the state must have a disability inclusion plan, and these inform local government plans. So this state action plan outlines 4 key areas: developing positive community attitudes and behaviours, creating livable communities, supporting access to meaningful employment, and improving access to mainstream services through better systems and processes. So today I'll be focusing on the second area, creating livable communities, and how as businesses and those who work in business, we can assist to enhance the lives of those in our community living with a disability by making some simple environmental tweaks to help with accessibility, and it's also great for business. So as a little start, this is a great clip by the Australian Network on Disability. So I might just play this to give us some context to my presentation.
Disability is common in Australia, but often invisible. Nearly 10% of the workforce has some form of disability, with 32% of employees with disability working as professionals or managers. As many as 1 in 5 Australians experience mental illness in any year, and 45% experience mental illness in their lifetime. The rate of disability increases with age. Nearly 40% of the Australian workforce is aged 45 or over, which means that your most experienced and skilled employees may be impacted at some point. So it makes sense for employers to be accessible and inclusive to people with disability, to ensure that they can hire the best person for the job and retain their skilled and experienced employees who may acquire disability. Who knows what great ideas could be lost because people see this, or this, before this. A business that reflects the diversity of the community it serves gains the loyalty and trust of both its customers and employees, as well as enhancing its reputation. And by making the recruitment process accessible and inclusive of people with disability, organisations have access to a wider talent pool of people with the right skills, qualifications, and experience. What's more, when you build your business to be inclusive, you're making it safer, minimising injuries, avoiding breaching discrimination law, and improving access for everyone. Disability-confident businesses benefit from new talent, new ideas, new opportunities. access and inclusion is good for business. For more information, visit AND.
I just thought that that was a great little clip that highlights how businesses can benefit from supporting those with a disability through retention of staff, attracting the right person for the job, and increasing safety for everyone in the workplace, not just those with a disability. So now that you have that little bit of background, I really wanted to outline some simple things we can all do and think about within our businesses and those we are part of. So for increasing ease of access, simple wedges or portable ramps can be purchased if you do have a step or a few steps into your business that are not easily modified. Ramps such as the portable ramp in the picture in the middle there, that was featured in the Wodonga City Council 2019 YouTube clip, Accessibility is Everyone's Responsibility, which is a great little clip actually. If anyone has an interest after this, it's a good little view. So these ramps are easily purchased online or from local disability equipment suppliers. They're only a few $100s and can easily be put in place and removed to support just someone in a wheelchair accessing a business. Think about the heights of counters and having at least a section of the counter that people can be served at, which is accessible from a seated height. If this is not an option, at least think about walking around the counter even just to hand the person items or collect some items from the person. Some counters are very difficult for those in a wheelchair or with balance issues, for example, to reach up and collect items from. Consider where you place items when trying to give them to people. Make sure that most, if not all, items can be accessed from a seated height. Generally between hip and shoulder level is a great guide. So space out items in shops so that someone in a wheelchair can move freely, and if in a retail shop, be able to browse items with ease. It just makes it so much easier and also increases the chance of them purchasing an item. The widths of doors is also a big one to think about because people in a wheelchair need room for their upper limbs if they're self-propelling their wheelchair, and sometimes for a carer behind them to assist in moving their chair. This might mean even just offering to open a second door to help someone, or if you are constructing or renovating a business building at any stage, think about making the door widths wider than what is standard. Music is a good one to think about too. Music being too loud makes it difficult for those who are visually impaired, as it drowns out the sense they rely on the most. This is also hard for people who have autism or who are deaf. So think about the volume of music that's being played in your business. Lighting is another one great to consider. Make sure your business is well lit and has some degree of contrast, so those who are visually impaired can see with ease. A good point to remember actually is that most people with a visual impairment are not completely blind. So having some degree of contrast is really helpful for them. If you are looking to install disabled access items such as lifts, think about the pathway to the lift and how someone will access it. As an example, actually, a local council-owned building has recently opened in the area with a new lift. However, the doorway that's needed for people in a wheelchair to go through to get to the lift is really very narrow. And the alternate route offered is through a storeroom, both of which are not easily accessible or reasonable options for someone in a wheelchair to have to try to negotiate. Also try to think about weight ratings on lifts and take into account that a lot of power wheelchairs will weigh 160 to 180 kilograms themselves, plus the weight of the person. So they really need a weight rating that can accommodate this. Furthermore, think about the space in the lift. Ideally, lifts would have room to support a person in a wheelchair and a carer, not just a single person. So some further things that you can do in your business. So for businesses which offer experiences such as gyms or clubs, it is great to support systems such as a companion card. So this is a card for people who need a high level of care support. This allows their carers to access the facility or experience without the person with the disability having to pay for the second person who is there to support them. Consider seeing if your business website also can be accessed with a screen reader. This is great for supporting your business, for increasing traffic flow on your website, and also keep the business website simple with a linear layout and limit items such as pop-ups. It makes it a lot easier for those with a disability to follow along with, and those that are using screen readers to be able to use your website. Make sure accessible bathrooms are actually accessible. Think about basic items such as the position of hand towels, heights of rails to help those in wheelchairs, but also those with a disability who are ambulant. Door swing direction. Multiple doors can often be a nightmare for those with a disability. So picture trying to get through doors in a wheelchair yourself. If possible, don't have the disability access at the back of the business. Why shouldn't everyone be able to use the same access to your business? If you don't have an accessible bathroom, for example, just simply knowing where the closest accessible bathroom is to your business is a great, I suppose, is a great handy tool to have. So when you are asked, you can easily guide those who have a disability to where they might need to go to access this. And if you do have an accessible bathroom, don't use it as a storage room. I'm sure we've all seen this where there's items chucked into a disability access bathroom, but it does make it really tricky for those with a disability to be able to use it. Try to make access doors automated if possible to save a person struggling with an awkward, difficult to reach or heavy door. Ask a person with a disability if you can help them. Just offer and put it out there. This is one of the most simple but definitely best strategies anybody can use. For example, offer to help with the door or to help them to move their wheelchair. Don't take for granted that it will be helpful what you offer, as everyone with a disability is different, and this is especially the case for those with disability. All of us are different really, but especially the case for those with disabilities. Use plain, simple communication and consider training your team in how to communicate clearly. Give time, don't rush the person. Often giving that little extra time can be a big help. Time for a person to process their thoughts and speak if they have a cognitive impairment or speech difficulty, for example. This time can make a real difference. Really, if you take nothing else away from my time today, it would be those few points I just mentioned around you and your team communicating clearly and offering help freely to assist those with a disability. And this will lead to repeat business. We all know we tend to return to places where we have felt welcomed and comfortable, and this is not unique to those of us who do not have a disability. Be careful not to let our own biases make us sceptical towards a person with a disability. Having a disability is certainly not a convenient or easy way to live, so it's not something people would choose. Don't be sceptical or rude towards people with disability, and if you feel uncomfortable as to what you can do, then I'd encourage you just to think back to what I just commented about, just offering help really, and allowing the person with the disability to guide you as to what will be truly useful and helpful. Another one I thought worth mentioning was just to be aware of having disability car parking configured in a way that is truly accessible at your business and not blocked. Furthermore, check there is an accessible gutter nearby. So sometimes you'll see a disability car park, but it'll be quite a distance from where there's actually a gutter that's accessible for someone in a wheelchair. Talk to council as needed. Both councils have staff who work in community development and can help. Be aware not to block footpaths or have other customers block paths or driveways, as this makes it really tricky for people to get through in chairs, or even if they're on walking frames or using a walking aid. Lastly, as a little megaphone says there, make sure you advertise your advantages. So if you work in an accessible business, let people know you are accessible and inclusive. It will certainly increase business and make your business attractive to those with a disability. As per the disability clip I played a little bit earlier, disability does impact a large proportion of the population. So it is great for business if we can be inclusive. So just a little bit of a recap of some key takeaways from my presentation. Around 18% of the Australian population have a disability, which means being accessible and inclusive, both environmentally and in recruitment, will improve your business sustainability. Start thinking about the small changes your business might be able to make so people with a disability can access your business just that little bit easier. Be open to communicating and listening to those with a disability and offer help. Unfortunately, unlike the picture, something magical doesn't just tend to happen, and accessibility won't improve if we don't take a single step. Even just pick one thing from today's presentation and implement it. A single step is certainly a single step in the right direction. Nothing beats being curious as well and talking to those with the disability themselves. But if you're unsure where to start, lean on services to get help. As I mentioned, both Albury and Wodonga councils have people who work in the area of community development and have community engagement groups with those that have a disability. There are also lots of useful websites, such as the Australian Network on Disability, who can assist with tips and tricks. And there are groups locally you can link in with for assistance, such as Capability Albury Wodonga Group. I'm actually part of this committee, and it can be accessed via Facebook. This is a group made up of businesses or those who work in the disability sector or in roles that link in with disability somehow. Myself and the team at Icaria are also more than happy to chat regarding disability inclusion and strategies with anyone at any stage. Lastly, I thought it was worth just leaving you with a little ponder point. Have a think about a world designed for those with disability, where door handles and bench heights were very low. Long ramps were the only way of getting to doors which are at height, and how this constantly being our reality would be wearing. This is the reality for those who have a disability. So if we can do anything to help them, and it also complements our business, why shouldn't we, really? Yeah, thanks everyone for your time. As I mentioned, I'm more than happy to be contacted directly with any questions, or if anyone has any questions now.
Thanks, Angela. I think the point that you made about being curious is a good place to start for everybody. And it was great to get your perspectives and look at it through a different lens. There were some wonderful tips and tricks around access and counter heights and making browsing and retail wheelchair friendly, which I think are great takeaways. Have we got any questions from those that are dialed in this morning that they'd like to ask Angela?
Yeah, hi Lise, it's Simone here. Hi Angela, nice to meet you. I just find it really fascinating, especially the story you told about the petrol station, because I actually come from a retail background and have built a couple of shops, and we had to comply so much, even 10, 15 years ago, with ensuring there was appropriate access, doors are wide enough. We had the ramps, bench heights, even things like with the provers and the fridges and the freezers, we had to have door handles at a certain height. And you know, and that, I have to be honest, that was actually in Melbourne. I don't know if Victorian laws are different to New South Wales laws, but I found that absolutely appalling that a petrol station, which is most likely going to be a really large brand, didn't have appropriate access. That just seems you know, unconscionable in these days. But the other thing I think, which is, to me, just seems like common sense, is a lot of the physical access issues that we're talking about in regard to disability access actually relates to people with prams. You know, so it's, you know, I think and can I also say, just like, you know, you're obviously an amazing human being because you've got 3 boys like Lisa. You know, you can tell the difference. It's like this resigned calm that mums of boys have. But I just, you know, we all faced those issues when our children were young. We're trying to access places and roads and paths and so on. So it's actually, it's not, I hate to use the word, but it's not unique or specific to the disability sector. It actually is a lot more broad reaching, I feel. It's common sense, it's logical.
Yeah, thanks, Simone. And that's so true. And I didn't even actually really think about that as I was going through and making up my presentation. But I have twins, so 2 of my boys are actually twins. And yeah, I would actually actively avoid some shops when I had the twins in the pram, because it was just too much of a hassle trying to get in and out and around shelving.
Absolutely. Yeah, throw that one in next time. Put in a few little videos of that.
Yes,
Well,
yeah, so
it's
true.
It's so relatable to, and even, you know, it should be relatable to all of us. But, you know, as parents, you know, I think today, you know, that does, we're talking to men and women, because we're all often will be pushing the pram. It is often something that you come across, and we just tolerate it or not tolerate it.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Has anyone else got any questions for Angela? All right. Thank you, Angela.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'll just finish up with a few final announcements. A reminder that the grant applications close soon for the COVID Business Grant, which is on the 1st of October, and JobSaver applications close on the 18th of October. The Albury Business Connect AGM is on Wednesday, the 20th of October, so please save the date. And we're accepting board nominations until the 30th of this month. Rach can send out nomination forms along with the slides and things after this session. A lot of planning, preparation and cost goes into hosting a business after hours. And unfortunately, a decision had to be made for September during increased restrictions and lockdown. The Printer Wizards will now postpone September's event and host in April 2022. At this stage, the businesswomen Albury Wodonga are forging ahead with their gala, which is planned for the 23rd of October, and tickets go on sale next week. Thank you all again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in person again soon. Thanks. Have a great day.